Let's suppress our egos. There's so much of this that we have to build together.
If you value your employees and want to see them win, they're going to feel it. And that will catch fire all the way down to the lowest level of the way.
Sam Aldinger. I respect Sam for so many things. His over 20-year tenure at Fastenal, his deep expertise and knowledge, but more so just his personal, family, and values.
Culturally, a company needs to focus on their customer and about what their customers' needs are. And that every strategy coming throughout all the departments should be driven towards that serving attitude of the customer. We as humans have to harness the control of the technology and let the technology serve us rather than be a victim and slave to the technology. That mind shift of not worrying about how well I do, but how well those do that report and help them do well.
Today I'm joined by someone that I've admired and frankly have chased down for years, Sam Aldinger. I first met Sam about 4 years ago. I was trying to build this product content syndication program between major manufacturers and Fastenal. At the time, Sam was leading product at Fastenal, and let's just say I pursued him pretty hard. What started as a business pursuit really turned into this genuine friendship. And in this episode, we're breaking the mold a bit. Instead of just talking about e-commerce and product content, which we both love, we're going to actually explore something even more important. Culture, relationships, corporate values, selling person to person. I respect Sam for so many things. His over 20-year tenure at Fastenal, his deep expertise and knowledge, but more so just his personal, family, and values. Trust me, the insights in this conversation are pure gold. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Sam Aldinger. Did you ever meet BK?
Yeah, quite a few times.
Yeah.
We had leadership courses that we would take, and he at the main leadership course when I first became a manager or director, I can't remember which one it was, but you would go through basically a week-long training, and you would learn all of Fastenal's cultural values. You would learn some just basic, what it means to be a higher level manager, etc. But it ended with BK.
He came in.
He would come in and just talk about his journey and talk about the successes. And he was such a humble guy. I mean, you would not know this guy, founded an $8 billion company.
Wow.
He still drove an old van. He, very modest and down to earth. And he'd love to, he would talk to anybody. If you were a secretary walking down the hall, he would look at you just as importantly as if you were, Dan Florness, the CEO. He wouldn't differentiate.
How did his values then affect the organization? How long were you at Fastenal?
20 years.
20 years. Do you remember in the beginning, 20 years ago, walking into the company? Like, how did that affect the culture that you came into?
He was really innovative, but he believed that everyone was. He believed that if you got the right person in the right area, they would own it. And my whole career was almost that exact thing is, hey, Sam, we're going to start you in a tool crib. And my managers throughout my whole journey there, everybody I reported to throughout my whole journey, basically would take you and throw you at something and would just try to let you have it be yours. And what can you do with this, Sam? What can you make of it? And if you did well, let's give you something else. I mean, I went to school for engineering, and then I actually changed and just did, basic supervisory management course. And I had just nothing specialized. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I found a home. And so when I came into a culture, it was a culture of empowerment, of we believe you can do this. We'll give you a leash. It might have been a short leash. I didn't know, but to me, it felt like I had all the power in the world to make a decision. And they trusted that if you had that ability to make those decisions, you would make the right ones. And my managers or everybody I reported to would always just make sure I stayed within the guardrails, that if I got too far off track, they would pull me in or question me and challenge, but not tell me what I needed to do. They would always want to let me try, and I mean, it progressed. My career started in the tool crib. They throw me out on the floor. Well, I wasn't that good on the machines. I could push buttons, but I wasn't designed for
Hmm.
CNC programming. Get me into an inside role and start looking at print reviews and procurement. Oh, I can do this. I can start talking to people and finding other companies to do this. And the buying side kind of became where I was strong. And the relationships with the suppliers, finding out what they did really well, got me into the corporate side. And before you knew it, I was, dealing with our suppliers all across the globe, learning about what they did best. But it was like I was in an environment where I could just be a sponge and learn and be empowered to contribute to it, where that was super rewarding. And so when I became into the manager side, that was something I was valued so much because I knew what it felt like,
Hmm.
that I wanted to help that with my people. So I wanted that environment for my people just as much as I had it. And there wasn't any, if there was one thing that we weren't very great at, it was training. I didn't go through training modules. It was pretty experiential,
Yeah.
where we would go through and just be thrown into the deep end and, hey, start swimming. But again, you always had people along the way that would keep you from fully drowning, or would come in and help. But that also gave you the environment to just take a piece and make it yours.
So you have a leader like BK? Did everybody call him BK?
Yeah, BK.
That was his name.
Yep. Or
Do you know much
just
about
Bob.
his history?
He, I think he was actually a teacher or professor, something about up in Minneapolis when he was young, and engineering. I think he was background in. He got this idea that he wanted to vend fasteners because his dad worked for a automotive parts company,
Hmm.
and he wanted to make it where people could come in and literally buy fasteners out of like a cigarette machine, like the old
Oh, wow.
cigarette machines. And he thought, if they can do that for cigarettes, I should be able to do that for auto parts. And so he thought he could build a vending machine for auto parts, or for like bolts and stuff. And so even if his dad wasn't in the store, so a customer could come in and start vending and just pull the bolts they needed for their car or
Oh,
whatever.
wow. This was in the beginning of his?
Yeah. And so he convinced four other of his friends to invest, and they started this caper of of
Hmm.
a vending company. And it is the irony of this, a vending company around fasteners. And in the first 2 years, it failed miserably. They could not get the machines to work. The technology wasn't there. They just didn't have a way. But they had invested in all of these assets of inventory and stuff, and so they had to figure out how to make things go, because they needed to make a buck. And Van McConnon was their first sales guy. He was one of the investors, and they said, "You're going to be our sales guy." And so Van's like, "Well, I don't know how to sell. What do I do?" And I think it was Van's parents, who said, "Just go ask the customers what they want, and they'll tell
Wow.
you." And so he got on the road, he started selling. And I mean, they took the lemons and made lemonade, and they ditched vending altogether. They got into fasteners, became extremely strong growth company in fasteners, and they started replicating sites. And BK just kept running with it. And he took it public. I can't remember when he passed it on to Will Overton was our second CEO. But once Will became the CEO, Bob actually went on to be a senator for the state of Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
So he was
When,
a
when
state
did it,
senator.
how long did it take for them to get back into vending?
2012. So they started 1967,
Wow.
and it wasn't until I think 2012.
1967, coming up with the idea for vending is an amazing thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'm sure it wasn't vending inside the customers. It was like
No,
just
it was
setting up
just
a
a vending.
shop for vending where you could just
Yep,
come in anytime and get what you needed, right? But still,
yep.
that was the precursor to that.
There's so many stories along the way where my last boss I had. I mean, he was asked, "Hey, do you want to move here?" And I don't remember where they moved him to, but Pennsylvania or something like that. And they said, "Do you want to move to Scranton?" And he said no. And they're like, "You sure you don't want to move to Scranton?" Or something like. And he said he ended up leaving everything he had. He wasn't married at the time or whatever, moved out to Scranton and started running their distribution center. And it was because people like Bob or Will always would find the people, they would tap them on the shoulder and say, we know you're good in here, but we think we have an opportunity over here. You want to try it?
Wow.
And that was huge. Just taking people's successes and kind of rolling that, letting the momentum move to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. It was just cool.
You sent me this link that talks about his kind of culture things. Tell me which one stands out. So these are what are these that we're looking at? We'll make sure these are in the show notes too.
So it's his 10 basic rules about leadership.
Okay.
He wrote a book, The Power of Fastenal People, and he talks through each and every one of these.
And you said you can't find it, or it's hard to find.
I think it's like $200 on Amazon.
Is it really?
Copy somewhere, yeah.
Oh, sweet.
I have a copy. I would gladly share it with you and let you borrow it if I
definitely would.
Get it back. But I do have a copy.
I'm gonna sell it on eBay when I'm done.
But it was one of those they handed out free, because they wanted everybody to. But now they wanted everybody to read it that was in Fastenal. But now, I mean, I'm sure the Fastenal School of Business publishes it still, but you can't find it out on the open market anywhere.
That's cool.
Fastenal would do well to monetize on that.
Heck yeah.
But you're back to your question. I'm reading through them here, and
yeah,
for anybody who's not watching, some of them go together. Suppress your ego, remember how little you know, and stay out of the spotlight. Those three are all pretty very humble. They just kind of show be more proud of what you do and not broadcast it. But my favorite, so I like the humble piece of it. But I think my favorite out of these, and they're all so good, it's hard to really blend. But my favorite would be let people learn.
What about the ego part speaks to you? I
mean, we just live and especially in a company of advancement where it's all about, making a name for yourself. It was competitive. Don't get me wrong. It was a very competitive environment.
Yeah.
But so everything you wanted to shout on the street tops, all the cool things you did, because you were put in an environment where you got to do a lot of cool things, and you got to come up with new ways to save money, new ways to develop something, whatever. And so the first thing you wanted to do is go out and broadcast that. Hey, look at what I did. But what I found is, personally, if you let other people worry about how well you did and you just keep doing well, it all came through in different ways. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about what I did. It was actually about somebody actually gave me the opportunity. I didn't do that. Somebody actually thought, hey, I'm going to gamble on Sam here. Or even better yet, there are so many good things we came across that was sheer happenstance. I got into corporate. I started in manufacturing. I got into corporate because of a problem with a supplier that was completely out of my control. But that got my foot in the door for corporate, which spiraled me on to running fasteners for the entire company.
Wow.
But it was because of a supplier problem that I helped with. And that wasn't, that was just happenstance. And I think you just got to be careful of how much you want to take credit for something yourself, because there's a team around you. There's people around you. There's, it's not just you. I think anyone honest with themselves can't say that it's all me. It's all I did. And those who do that are probably a little more insecure on the inside than they realize, and they're just trying to hide it.
We had a situation this week, Sam, where someone from the outside took credit for something that one of our coaches did, and the frustration of that, right? There's an ego part of that, but there's also a managerial or a leadership problem when you're taking credit for somebody else's work, right? Yeah. Even if it's not super intentional, the fact that you don't call it out of, I did this part, but this person, like lifting somebody above yourself is just an incredible way of leading people, right? Yeah. And then when problems come, to step in front of the problems but give your people the credit is an incredible place to lead from.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when I first started, the challenge rather than the control, when I was first a manager, because I got my manager spot, I think I've learned the hard way a little bit, but I wanted to, because I knew things so well, I wanted to pretty much tell everybody what to do. And I just remember learning pretty quickly. I think it was my boss or whoever at the time had seen it, really said, you got to let go. You got to just start delegating and putting that in front of people. And so that mind shift of not worrying about how well I do, but how well those do that report to you,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them do well. That was a huge, huge mental shift. And once that clicked, and it was all about, my entire role was about helping the team be empowered to be successful. And that was what made me successful, not me working harder, not me being smarter than them, but giving them every opportunity to shine. And then that just reflects on the group, and it creates, inspiration across the group, not only for the people that did it, but for those who are coming in new or that may be in a slump. They're seeing the success, the wins, and realize that can be that they're part of that too, and they can contribute.
Let's read out these. So here's the 10 basic rules about leadership. Again, we'll include this link in the show notes. Challenge rather than control. Treat everyone as your equal. Stay out of the spotlight. Share the rewards. Listen rather than speak. See the unique humanness in all persons. Develop empathy. Suppress your ego. Let people learn. And remember how little you know. There's an interesting thing about values, Sam. In fact, I just had the conversation last week with someone. I can't remember. I think we were talking about. I was talking to Sarah Falcon about this.
Sure.
We were talking about values, and when you come up with values and you try to apply them to your organization, it never works. When you try to put in words what the values you're already working under, that's when it's amazing, right? So you try to put in words what you already do,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's the watch what I do, not do what I say, right? And it's the what we always tell our kids, do what I say, not what I do. It's the opposite of that. It's just no, just watch what I do. This is how I want to represent it for you, and it feels like BK was in Fastenal's culture was based off of what he actually did with people, and people tried to replicate that underneath him, and that's what created the culture.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because it was definitely more of you were following by example.
Following
And to
by
your
example. I love that quote.
point, and you were sucked into it,
Mm-hmm.
in a positive way. It sounds negative, but you were bought in to the environment and wanted to contribute to it. And I think that was really healthy. That made the organization really healthy, because you had a culture that people could get behind, and come and be excited to come to work and have fun doing it.
Yeah. And I love that. See the unique humanness in all persons. Man, Sam, in what we do in this B2B e-commerce world, so often we think of, I mean, even the word B2B, right? Business to business is this idea of companies working with companies. And yet most of the power of B2B is the relationships between the people. While it's two companies working together, so much of it's the relationship between, maybe it's two owners or two long-term friends or new relationships that started that you've helped someone. And I kind of feel even stronger today that our business really, and I don't mean my business, but this B2B thing is so much more about relationships than we give it credit for in our technology world.
I helped assist sales, and I was never on the sales side. I helped assist sales, but got to know a lot of the sales leaders in the specific areas, and developed really good relationships with them. And I could tell it was all about relationships. Their success was because with the customer was because not only could they sell value and they could bring the value the Fastenal model brought, but would be because they actually knew them. Their kids played on the same
Yeah.
hockey team,
Hmm.
or they would humble themselves in front of their customers and take the hits time and time again until finally the customer saw this is a real person here, and people buy from people, and I saw that on even the biggest contracts we landed. If the right people weren't in the room and you didn't have the right head-to-head conversations and relationship management there at the highest level, they would fizzle out, because once it became transactional, that business could possibly leave so quickly. A new person comes in, wants to put a value on it, whatever, and or one person leaves, and then you've got a one-sided relationship, and it just never comes back. And before you know it, that'll leave those. So the relationships, just from a business to business level, rely on people, and that's kind of where I wanted to go with this whole conversation, even about
Mm.
BK, is that he believes so much in this and built the success of a fantastic organization on this. But we're in this environment where it's all about having the best tech and having the most efficient system. While I think that is critically important, it's actually more about the people behind that,
Hmm.
and about why they're doing it. Are they doing it to serve? Are they doing it to bring the best out of their customers? And are they being smart in that they're not going to let the technology drive their decisions? They're going to drive the decisions for the tech to follow. There is a means in which we as humans have to harness the control of the technology and let the technology serve us, rather than be a victim and slave to the technology. And that's what I've witnessed that, and then we had that in areas of Fastenal, or we thought that technology would be the answer, and it wasn't, because we didn't have the right people, or we didn't have the right approach to it from a personnel standpoint. And that's maybe because we forgot that you need a human to run this. You need the right person to come in and make this theirs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, too, there's so many aspects of everything we're doing that's all people based, right? I mean, while people buy from people, that doesn't mean transactions need to include people. So we're not talking about the transactional nature of this,
Yeah.
but the people side of this is the most critical. I mean, the people side of it's the most critical when you're trying to get adoption, internal adoption, and it's not just about doing tactics to manipulate someone into using your system. It's about, going back to here, develop empathy. Number 7, develop empathy.
Yes, exactly.
Developing empathy is the number one thing in change management and customer adoption, is understanding, listen rather than speak. Number 5.
I was just gonna say that one. Listen rather than speak.
Yeah, that's crazy. How do you see this? So in the new tech world, we're even going deeper now, right? So we have AI that's now in the mix that we're both heavy users of. How do you think of AI when it comes to this idea of people?
Maybe look at it in terms of the empowerment piece, where technology allows you to be better, to do better at your job, to complement your weaknesses. And I'm thinking AI. I mean, I use AI as my editor now. Just because I can be wordy, I can use the wrong language. I love conversation, but when I actually have to write, I have to think really hard and
Yeah.
be very careful. And so I can use AI as an editor. And what that does is it actually helps me just be me and come back and give me then an edited copy, and then I can go through and say, does this make sense? Does this what I want to say? And that is so much less tedious for me than if I were to fully write out a white paper, or something fully on my own. And that's just me personally. But if you think about it in terms of any mundane task, or any area where is very inefficient, if you can apply technology, it's a good thing, because what it does is it brings the value of what you can contribute up. because you're not draining yourself on what you can't do well. And it's not that, to your point, it's not that humans need to take orders. You can have that automated process around order processing and transaction. But what about that order experience has the seller listen to the buyer in listen rather than speak, develop empathy. There's problems on that within that. I mean, somebody tell me they have a perfect mechanism for purchasing.
Right.
And if they don't, or if they do, then please come to the B2B EAO Association and help educate.
Tell us.
But if you don't,
we'll help you patent it.
Exactly. We'll find you a way to retire now. But if you don't, it's because there's problems, and those problems have to be tackled by humans. And that's where the human can come in and help innovate and listen to, all right, if this problem's here, how can we help? How can we serve? That's what will get the customers coming back.
I think there's another aspect of this too, Sam, that I didn't think about until you said what you just said, which is I've done two things over the last 3 months. One is I hired someone to help me, a business manager to help me, and she is taking the things that I'm not good at off my plate daily basis. I'm doing the same thing with AI, and we're both doing the same thing with AI. She's utilizing it, I'm utilizing it to remove the things you call them mundane things, removing those things from my plate. And here's what it's enabled me to do. I'm on the phone. I'm doing 6 meetings a day, 8 meetings a day, average. I'm probably averaging 6. I'm probably doing close to more like 8 meetings a day for a half hour where I'm just meeting people, asking their story. And with all those other tasks on my plate, I couldn't focus on that which is most important, which is building relationships, trying to figure out how I can help people, right? It also opens up the headspace to think about that more strategically too, right? And then we move to the B2B commerce world where we've said this. I don't know if we've really meant this or not, but maybe for the first time I do mean it as you were talking, which is if we can remove order taking from our salespeople's heads and tasks, maybe they can focus on selling, which is really what we're saying. Maybe we can help them focus on building relationships and strategically thinking about the customers and consultative selling, right? And we say those words a lot, but I don't know how much we actually mean them. And I don't know how much I've meant them because I've just said them as a practical thing until you said that. I was like, no, that's a serious proposition there.
Just think about the mental suck that has on your brain for the stuff that you struggle with. And then it allows you to excel in what you're best at.
Yeah.
And then whether you're an accountant, salesperson, whatever, take what your brain isn't wired to do and figure out ways in which that can be done with the help of another or with technology and be the best of what you are. And I mean, you don't not have, no company should have one of the same type of person for every employee. And this will give you the variety. And that's, see the humanness in all persons, see the unique humanness in all persons. Number 6.
Yeah. What would BK? I know BK passed away. It was a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago. It was just real sudden. It was sad and just a huge loss for the Fastenal community. And so many. I mean, you go on LinkedIn and just search Bob Kierlin. I mean, there were so many posts about Bob Kierlin and the value he brought to the individual. And everyone has a story about how they met Bob or what they did with Bob. Just it's cool.
How do you think he would view AI today if he was running Fastenal? Well, what do you think his view of it would be?
I'm sure he would be leveraging the heck out of it. I mean, he was a huge person behind technology. I mean, obviously he was innovative. Right. He'd probably be loving this conversation. I would hope that he would love the conversation about how do you cherish these ideas in this environment, and how does that change your way you manage your progress in as an organization? with your culture, with your people, and with adding technology to that.
To make it personal, Sam. So for a couple years, I chased you individually in your role at Fastenal. I
Yeah.
chased you, right? So, and we had conversations, but almost all of our conversations were really super business focused for a long time. And then I remember the day. And then after that process, we had a conversation where I don't remember the exact conversation it was, but I remember the feeling of it. We had a conversation where it wasn't about just work. It was more about career and personal and related to Fastenal,
Yeah.
but not related to like Fastenal's business. It was more your role and answering things like that. And at that time things changed for us too, where it
Absolutely.
stopped being it became a a relationship, a personal relationship. And I think that's an ironic thing with all of these rules is that's exactly how we connected too, on that same level.
That's funny you bring that up because you're right. Once we were able to see that it was not just a business transaction,
Yeah.
essentially, our conversation was not just a business transaction.
Mm-hmm.
You are a human. You have personal struggles and real life victories and a life just like I do.
Yep.
And it's cool to find the commonality in that. And once that dawns on a relationship, kind of opens up the opportunities for real collaboration, real teamwork.
Yeah. And if we bring it, think about this for a minute, because if we bring it into our world, right? This is a B2B commerce podcast, but so much of what we do, if we would just treat it with empathy and understand. I mean, even when you think about like a customer journey map, right? The customer journey map works the best when you actually map, okay, how's the customer feeling at this point? And you start listening to exactly what the customers are saying. Or you start thinking about, okay, when I'm putting this system in place, how do my sales team feel about this? And not to just be thrown out with, oh, they're being dramatic, or, oh, they're worried about themselves. Like actually sitting down and listening to them would move the needle for all of us significantly. How would you frame some of this in our B2B e-commerce world?
People buy from people. And
Mm-hmm.
but that, I guess the assumption there is that you have to recognize that is you are a person. The person that is making that transaction is a person. And there has to be the empathy. There should be the empathy, because if you were put in that position, you'd want that. And that's what will actually drive the success of your organization, is because you've now selflessly went to your and understood what your customer wants rather than try to tell them what they want. And that drives all of your business strategy. Now you start reprioritizing what you should focus on. Gentleman I worked with, I remember sitting in his office, and he came back from Chicago. I think it was the B2B world. Or
B2B online.
It was B2B online. It was Kirk Telmontes. And he came back, and I remember sitting in his office, and he was just jazzed because of one thing. He said, Sam, it just dawned on me how critical culturally a company needs to focus on their customer.
Mm.
Like just how insatiable a company should be about their customer and about what their customers' needs are. And that every strategy coming throughout all the departments should be driven towards that serving attitude of customer.
Mm.
And he was like high on it, because it and I don't know I did not go there. I wish I was there, but it was, he just came back so strongly about how critical customer was, and what that meant was find the customer's needs, the human needs of the customer, the pain points, it's listening rather than speaking. It's
Mm-hmm.
developing empathy. It's all of that from the customer. And he's right, because the second you take your eyes off the customer, you are starting to speak rather than listen. You lose your empathy. You take all these and you're going backwards. And it was just cool. I just remember him coming back from
That's
that.
cool.
Just,
He's still talking about it. I talked to him last week, and he's
awesome.
Kirk is still talking about that. It's the same type of thing.
It's good, because he's right. And whoever instilled that him at B2B Online, thank you. Keep driving that message.
Sam, talk to the executive team. Talk to the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, not directly related to e-commerce, but talk to them. They're a mid-market, they're a $750 million distributor. Talk to them about what culture, this people culture, needs to be and how important it is, and for the employees, but also just for the success of the company.
Clearly, the employee is becoming more and more, I think, even your cherished asset. And so you think about how well the accounting team manages the books, and how precise they are in making sure that the financial practices are sound, because that's the assets that are the bottom line. Well, people are equally, if not more, an asset to the organization. And so what does their journey look like within your organization? What does that look like from the day they enter the doors as a new employee? And do you have ways in which they don't, I personally think you don't need there's so many added benefits. It's not just a benefits package. I'm talking about a culture that they come into where it's rewarding, where they feel like they'll get heard, where they have a way to contribute, but where they also see servant leadership happening all the way up through. And that takes a lot of work. If you don't have it, how do you start? And it probably starts with your direct reports and having an honest conversation about where employee morale is at. And that goes, and all of that trickles down. All of that will bleed down, but it starts at the executive level. If you value your employees and want to see them win, they're going to feel it. And they're going to, and how do you catch it? Then that will catch fire all the way down to the lowest level employee.
I think Sam, you have a word like servant leadership. I think this is part of the problem, is you have a word like servant leadership, and so people adopt that word. So you'll hear people say, I believe in servant leadership. I feel like BK, we started the conversation this way. I feel like BK just did this stuff, and then someone created words to describe what he did, versus taking a concept and trying to say that's what I am.
Yep.
And so it's this idea of modeling it and treating people, and then making that the core value, and then maybe it becomes words. Maybe it becomes words at some point, but the words are less important than the modeling of it. And I feel so often, and I'm guilty of this. This is a convicting statement to make, because I feel like I read a book and I'm like, that's who I want to be, instead of saying, here's who I'm going to be. Here's who I'm going to be as a man, as a leader, as a father, all aspects of my life. And then becoming that person, and then letting those actions be personified in words down the line, versus trying to say this is the type of company or leadership position I'm going to take. I'm going to be.
All right. So if you're an executive, based on what you just said, go buy BK's book on Amazon for $199 or whatever it is.
I'm going to go buy a bunch, and I'm going to jack up the price after this.
Go buy a bunch, and read, consider, and do.
Yeah.
What he did. And it starts just in it is a whole mindset shift, to your point. It is humbling. You can read a book and affirm it all, but never do any of it.
Yep.
Because you can fall victim of the ideal, of believing in the ideal, but never actually self-reflecting and seeing, am I modeling that ideal? And if you don't want, you can just take the web link that we'll have in the notes below and read the little article.
Yeah.
And at least you've got a model, and start applying that to your everyday. And hopefully you believe in it enough to run with it throughout your organization, and they can see that.
And in our community, for everyone listening, like, let's suppress our egos. And there's so much of this that we have to build together, that I can't build, that Sam can't build, that other people can't build alone. And let's suppress our own egos here and really start, learning from each other, so we can actually put some of this into words down the line. It's an interesting point being at the spot that we're at, because we're at the beginning of the curve, not the middle of the curve or at the end of the curve, right? So we actually, and I'm saying us, collectively us, not the B2B e-commerce association, but our industry can be a place where people they want to be here. And we could do that at the industry level too, and say B2B e-commerce is just the best place to be. Like, you come into the community and people are just helpful everywhere, right? And credit is shared across our industry. It doesn't have to be our company, it's just shared across our industry. And man, Sam, I have a passion for that. To have a place where it's just a special, like, the community is special in this. Again, not the association, the community in general is just a special place for individuals to learn and be successful in too.
That is what I hope everybody will want to be a part of.
Yeah.
And see the value that brings. It's the pay it forward mentality in a way, but it really is just building up all of those around us to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And if you surround yourselves with better people, naturally you get pulled up in that. And so if everybody's focused on helping others, you're going to get this perpetual drive of increased improvement across the broader community.
I think there's one more thing here too, going back to our earlier conversation of, it was when, and this was both of us. This wasn't one of us over the other. When Sam and I connected, it was because it was no longer about Fastenal or my company or Salsify. It was just two people all of a sudden having a conversation. And everyone, that's the real power of what we can do, is to actually build those personal relationships. And if you build one with Sam, he might sell you a goat or a chicken or some vegetables. He'll let you go visit his farm, which I need to come and visit. I found out that Brian McCarthy came and visited you at your farm, and I hadn't been there before, and he had, and that actually made me frustrated. Not at you, but that I hadn't been there and he had actually made it to you.
Open doors. But no, Brian came. We had a great time. We walked around, and he was telling us his dreams about about what he wants to do with his acreage out in Colorado. And
that's awesome.
So I've followed up with him.
He was looking at HOA rules to see if he could have things on his property.
He could. And he could. He had he confirmed back to me. He's like, Sam, I can get chickens, and I can do all this stuff.
He's gonna go to Brian McCarthy's place, and there's gonna be a cow in the middle of a neighborhood, and it'll be Sam's fault.
Yes,
Sam, this was amazing. Thank you.
It was great talking, and I just really am privileged to be part of, I guess, bringing these ideas out in the community, and love anybody who wants to talk about it or talk about homesteading and chickens and goats. Sure, that'd be great.